What's up, guys? Welcome back to VHB Engines. And let's give a warm welcome back to the iPhone 5. Yes, I missed you so much. Fucking quality on that video yesterday was terrible bad. It made me feel bad because I really liked what I talked about in that video, and that one might get a lot of circulation, and I don't want that shitty quality to be the first thing everybody sees, or that a lot of people see. But whatever. So, tonight's topic, the video that will end the week, will be on me, my history, my origins, what makes me tick, and how I got this shit started. I'm sorry for some of you guys if this is going to be a disappointing upload, but some of you guys also, or some of you other guys, have asked about this a couple of times over the past few months. Actually, going back pretty far since I actually started getting the feedback from the channel, but I didn't think there was enough people around at the time to talk about this. Plus, the channel is a big part of me, so I wanted to get a little bit of history here on YouTube first before I had to talk about this. But I guess that this can be like a two-parter. I'll do this now in the beginning of YouTube, leading up to YouTube, and then we'll see maybe another couple years how I've done then, or since the start. All right, so my first okay, so to go back to when this all started for me, I was 19 years old, and I didn't know shit about fuck when it came to cars. I didn't care either. I mean, my very first car was one of those E350 condo line vans, one of those pedophile vans. It was bare metal in the back with just two front seats that topped out at 70 miles an hour on a good day. That was my first ride. That was given to me by my father. And then later on, I upgraded from that to like a 91 Geo Prism sedan. And that was fucking awesome for me. I was like, yeah, this is the shit. I got a real car and not that fucking van anymore. And I can tote people around without them dying. It's not going to cost me a lot of gas. And eventually I topped that motherfucker out at 100 miles an hour. That was amazing. But anyway, I didn't really care about cars beyond what it could do, get me from A to B. I couldn't differentiate between any of them. Didn't care to know. But one night I was at work, and a friend of mine, well, a couple of friends at the time had already been starting to dabble in the racing scene. But once again, not give it a fuck. I never really paid too much attention. I just heard the stories. The stories were cool. I liked the stories, but other than that, I really didn't pique my interest too much. But anyway, one night, a friend of mine came up in his beautiful Midori green fucking EG hatch, and it was B20 swapped, and he had like a little Frankenstein transmission going on. He had some, I think it was a LS tranny with like a third gear out of the GSR, or third and fifth out of the GSR. And it was neat, real pretty, impressive. And then another one of my friends that worked with me had a fucking a coupe, a CD5 coupe with a boosted single cam. Like, the F22 or, F22A or some shit, turbocharged. It was stock turbo, just a throw on kit, So, of course, this shit talking got thrown back and forth. My homeboy in the hatch was like, I'll fucking destroy that shit. He's like, man, you don't know about nothing. I got this shit fucking on boost. I'm gonna fucking tear you up. He's like, oh yeah, bet, right now, let's go. And that was the first time I'd ever been caught in the middle of some car smack talk, right? And, also, he's like, you want to go? He's like, jump in. I was like, fuck yeah, let's jump in. Let's go for a race. Sometimes you just got to race. So we jumped in, and I don't know, for any of you guys that are watching in Florida, it was that Krispy Kreme on 167th Street, right there from that corner all the way down to the park. I can't remember the name of the park that's there, but if you're familiar with Miami, you know this park. It's a good stretch. It's not a quarter-mile run. I'd say it's longer. But anyway, so we hop in there, we hop in the car, and he gets in the Accord, and we line up in traffic. Shouldn't do that. It's bad, by the way. Line up. Well, it's not heavy traffic because there was no impedance on the way down. It was late at night. So it wasn't heavy traffic. So he hopped in the fucking cars, jumped in, the fucking Accord lines up. They do like a real slow roll, like a 20 roll, and fucking hit it, man. And And when he hit it, man, threw me back a little B-23 in the fucking seat. And I could have sworn I was in the Millennium Falcon. The fastest fucking thing I'd ever been in. It fucking blew me away. I'd always been, like a speed junkie, a speed adrenaline junkie, but I hadn't I hadn't really paid attention to cars, even though that should have been the obvious thing to take care of that speed thing, but the speed craving, but I didn't really think about it. And he fucking did. He tore that Accord's asshole up. From the Krispy Kreme all the way down to the park, fucking stretched the shit out of homeboy in the Accord. Now later on, they didn't re-race or anything, but later on, I wound up driving that Accord once because it switched hands and went to my homeboy. And and on the highway, it had some good top end, but I really don't think that car was tuned. I really think they just strapped a fucking turbo kit on there and called it a day. And it's amazing the car lasted as long as it did. Yes, it did eventually blow up. But anyway, that's besides the point. So I go on this fucking light speed journey into hyperspace in this fucking hatchback, and I was like, yo, I have to have something like this. What the fuck? And so then it opened my eyes, and that was, so what I do? I did the same thing that every fucking young car enthusiast does. I started modifying what I had because I was broke, and I couldn't really afford. I was living alone, and at the time the arrangement was my dad had already billed and went back to DR. He was from the Dominican Republic. When that stock market crash shit happened, or the early days of it, it affected my dad pretty hardcore. He was into real estate, lost everything he had, and eventually we lost our house. And I moved into an apartment in Aventura because that's where my dad moved all his shit to. And we kind of had like an unspoken arrangement where he would use the apartment for storage for all his shit, and of course I would live in the apartment, and I would pay all the utilities, and he would just pay rent. So I paid all the utilities, I paid for the car, the cell phone bills, and all that shit, and he just paid the rent. And that's how that worked out for a while. But anyway, me and my dad I'm skipping ahead. I modified the car that I had, and that was the Geo Prism. So I did what any guy does, and I put an intake on there to make it louder, and then I went into the exhaust shop and get a muffler put on. Like, what kind of muffler do you want? I was like, I don't care, just fucking, And he's like, oh, make it loud. I'm like, yeah, make it loud. So I did that, and I drove around on that fart box and my intake, making all kinds of beautiful noises, and then I started going to the hangouts. And I tell you what, guys, the Miami scene down there is just like Fast and Furious. It is like without the Chinese music or the Japanese music, but it's like going to those meets when they're big. I used to have a lot of pictures on MySpace, but of course that's MySpace and I can't get back into it. But I used to have a lot of pictures of that shit. It was straight out of a Fast and Furious movie. It was amazing. And I used to go out there and chase motherfuckers. Like, they'd go on their races, and I would just try and stomp on it and see how long I could hang with people, which of course wasn't very long at all. And that's how I got my introduction to the car world. And it was like fucking heroin. I just couldn't get enough of it. Anytime that we were going out, I wanted to be there and all that shit. But what happens is, so to get back to what I was saying, was that me and my dad eventually had a falling out. And I said, fuck you, and he said, fuck you, and I was like, he's like, get out, and I'm like, fine, I'm leaving. And I bounced, and within a day or so, I left and went to West Virginia. I have where I'm currently at now, and not because that's plenty of years in between here and then. It wound up being like a full circle thing, strangely. But I said, fuck you, I'm out, I'm going to West Virginia and shit. I come up here, I spent time with friends I grew up with as a child, and I reintroduced myself to the family and shit. And, I had family up here from my mom's side, and I wound up getting a shit job. Well, it wasn't a shit job. I mean, actually, I had a lot of fun at Wendy's. I got at Wendy's, and I started working there, and the car fever never left me, because that was the time I was still new to it, and it was still blossoming, and I still wanted more. And I didn't have a car anymore because I was too damn scared to make the drive from down there to up here in the Geo. So I wound up making an arrangement that went bad with a friend where I was going to sell him the car. He wanted to give me a little bit of money and didn't pay me the rest of it, and my dad fucking gave him the title, and he took the car, and we'll finish that story later. But so that happened. I left. I was up here for like 5 months, and I had like a fucking nervous breakdown. I was like, I had to get the fuck out of here. Like, being young and being in this town up here is fucking terrible. being the fact that this is the second largest city in the state, there still ain't shit to do here. Like, we spent, with me and my homeboys and homegirls out running around late at night, we spent hours just going back and forth through a small town and going to the Walmart because that was the only thing we could do. So I'm at this point in time, I'm already used to the street life and the nightlife in Miami, and you don't have that here. So just cabin fever, freaked out, and said, fuck this, I'm out, I'm going home. And just as quick as I came up, is just as quick as I left. And, I packed up my bag, didn't really have much else shit to worry about, got on a fucking plane, left. Got back home, didn't have shit there, but I went, the first thing to do is acquire a car. So I went back to my homeboy who had got the car off of me, and this motherfucker, he stiff-armed me, bro. He wasn't going to give me my car back. He's like, why should I give it to him? It's mine. That's what he didn't tell me that. He told other people behind my back. So eventually I was like, well, fuck you, stupid. Don't, whatever, that's fine. Take the goddamn car. I was going to sell it to him for 500 fucking bucks. It wasn't even a lot of money, But anyway, he, eventually he wanted to give me the car back. When he gave me the car back, it had a fucking rod knock. He fucking blew up an automatic geoprism because he just, ran it out of oil and never checked and just ran it on low oil for the longest time. But whatever, he's like, oh yeah, do me a favor, bro, give me the car back. He gave me the car back with a fucking knock. You ain't doing me no fucking favors, but whatever. So the car had a knock. I junked the fucking car. I had a little bit of money. I'd already started working, and I was bumming rides or whatnot. Or no, I still had money left over. And of course, when I got back to Florida, the first thing I'm thinking is, yes, I'm in a fucking real city. There's fucking Hondas everywhere. I went into this, I was fucking fiending the whole time I was gone. And of course, I call a homeboy who calls a homeboy, and we know somebody who's selling a hatch. Now, what had happened was this hatch was a race car. Was a race car for a while, and what he did, the guy pulled the fucking swap out of it and sold it to another friend. Or no, he sold it as it was to a friend, but the shell wasn't in very good condition. So my homeboy took the swap out of it, put it in another car, and then put a single cam from that car into that car to be able to sell that. And the guy wanted like $600, $700, maybe $800 or some shit like that. I don't know. But whatever. The guy sat on the car for a long time. Nobody wanted to fucking buy it. It was gutted out when I saw it, and it was bad. Quarter panel was clearly damaged in the back. So I show up, and it's of course it's standard, it's manual, which I didn't know shit about driving at the time. So my dad goes with me because he's gonna cut a check and I'm gonna give him cash, and which was amazing. The guy agreed to a check, but I think he agreed to a check because of the situation where we all knew each other and shit. So the guy winds up accepting $400. So I bought my first fucking Honda was a $400 car. It was an EG hatch, and I have pictures of that. Maybe I'll fucking fish them out and throw them on my Facebook or Instagram or some shit for you guys. But that was my first Honda. So my dad was like, he's like, are you sure about this? It's fucking manual. You've never driven that before. He's like, I'm a little uncomfortable with you buying this car and not knowing how to drive it. And I said, don't worry about it. I got this. Don't worry about it at all. Don't worry about it. I was like, I'm going to handle that. And he's like, are you sure? Yeah, I'm sure. So how are you going to get it out of here? My homeboy drove it. And it got to a place where, I could practice and fart around on it. And I did. And I drove around, like stopping and stuttering and shit. And eventually I got it. And it didn't take me more than 2 days before I could drive with it, somewhat decently. Not like full comfort, like dodging through traffic and this shit. I didn't unwind in it right away, but I was able to drive in it comfortably. And as a matter of fact, the fact that I was a bad driver at standard kind of saved me from an accident because like the day after I got it, these guys rolled through a fucking right when you're going on through that interchange by Parkway, or I guess Jackson North now. Guy just kind of skated through the fucking light next to that BP, and there's a guy going through our green light, and they just slow motion. Boom! Nasty crash. Right when that happened, I caught gear and I was like, whoop, went around him. I would have been in that shit. I would have hit that guy in the ass for sure, or I would have T-boned the T-boner had I been able to go properly. But anyway, so I get the car, my first manual. I get accustomed to driving it, and then my other homeboy, another one of my friends, was also driving a Honda at the time, and I think by this time he had a B16 swapped like EK coupe or EG coupe. I can't remember which one it was. But anyway, he had the B16, and he introduced me to some guys that I went to high school with them. I knew them, but I didn't like know them. They were a little bit ahead of me, and they had a car club, and that car club was Ambitious Riders. And I was all about it, man. I fucking, started going out to the hangouts and shit with them, and, eventually got some stickers on the car, and we all, had a lot of fun. And some of my funnest fucking nights ever as a car enthusiast was those early days. Riding in a group doesn't matter the power of the car, but when you're riding in a group like that in a car that you have fun driving, it's extremely fun. It's to just drive tandem with people is really fun to do. And also, too, the fact that I had a single cam with nothing to lose, that kind of like took any hindrance off of worrying about, losing a race or being stressed about losing a race. Just went out there, I'd race anything. And after a little while, I wound up meeting the big Honda mechanic that was ever... No, I'm not saying that sarcastically. That guy is a damn good mechanic. To this day, he's a fucking badass. And, I wound up getting introduced to him, and he did me a big fucking solid. He did just off rip meeting me. He agreed to run a tab on me, run a credit, and do a swap for me. He did he put the D15B, like the JDM VTEC D15, and he pulled out that non-VTEC slush box I had. It was a piece of shit, and he put that in there, and there was a noticeable power jump for me from the butt dyno. It was, of course, those engines aren't very fast, but you got to remember that I'm used to topping out 100 miles an hour thinking that's a fast thing. The B20 was the fastest thing in the world I'd ever experienced. So that, that D15B wasn't bad. And eventually my ECU got chipped when the chip guy eventually passed through the shop one day, and he was just chipping everybody's shit. And he removed the rev limiter and all that shit for me. And that was great, man. There was plenty of nights where I was on the fucking I-95 in third gear at 120 miles an hour with no fucks given. I fucking beat the shit of that car. I beat the shit out of that car. Eventually, I got close to that because the mechanic guy, I wound up, I had really rough patches, man, because my dad was out of the country. My mom lived upstate somewhere. I didn't have any immediate family that was supportive, and I was sleeping on homeboys' couches and shit. Still working, still have my car, though. And eventually, I wound up renting a room off this Haitian lady. And and that house was like down the street from the mechanic shop. I wound up spending many nights with the mechanic. We just I'd go and just chill. And he had like a poker table there and shit. There'd be poker nights and stuff, and video games and TVs and movies and shit. So I'd just go chill and watch and learn as much as I can from seeing. And then wherever we'd go out to make when he'd go out to buy parts and whatnot, we'd tag along. Plenty of late night road trips, and I wasn't the only one. There was a lot of guys that did that, that chilled with the mechanic, And I just, of course, being around it more and more, fed the desire to just do more. But of course, working on the budget I was, taking care of myself and not with the greatest pay, I did what I could, which was much of nothing. So eventually, that Krispy Kreme I worked at, I got hired back there. I got hired back there as a supervisor. So I had a nice little bump in money, but it was still only like $450 a week, so still not really a lot to do much. And so it turns out that I wouldn't see any kind of power modification or any kind of more power in my car for a very long time. Because, like I said, I left when I was 19, or when I was 19, I had my first Honda experience, and then not too long after that, I left. I got back to Miami, had my little hatch that I drove for about a year, and then I finally got lucky. Income tax money came in, and I had like $700 extra, and I wound up getting like a GSR through the same homeboy who helped me find the hatch. He ran into somebody that was down south Miami who had a GSR, and we worked out a deal. I was able to put money down on it, a couple $100 down, and we agreed for $1,000. He was trying to sell it for for 15, but he agreed to $1,000 because it was a homeboy hookup. I gave him $200 off rip, and then income tax money came in. The entire income tax was like $700, and I gave him that plus a little money out of pocket, and paid it off. And I was living in a room that was probably about the size of this little office space I have, with a bathroom included though. And in that little tiny room, I was stacking parts. I had a transmission, I had the engine, fucking bolt-ons and shit laying around that I'd been stashing. And then eventually I got a transmission. Now here's what fucked me up. I was, at this point in time, I was getting ready to join the Army. But by no means in hell was I about to pass up on this GSR, the experience, right before I was going to go. And so what I did was I did a hasty mistake. And a friend's brother, who's I'm also real cool with and shit, he's like, well, we can do a swap, just shoot me a little money when you can. And I wound up stiffing him. Like, I didn't give, not on purpose, but it just wound up being that way. I gave him a little bit of money, and I didn't give him everything I promised. And he wasn't really, pushing me for it, but I volunteered it. And so anyway, I pulled the single cam out, and some dudes that were in this crew called Honda Boys in Hollandale were fucking pieces of shit people. They had a transmission, and I was like, dude, I'll give you my whole swap for the training. And they were like, done deal, we're there. They went, dropped off the transmission, took the swap ran beautifully for them, fucking faggots. No offense to anybody who might be gay. They're faggots, though, for faggoty shit. Anyway, these fucking assholes took that fucking swap from me, dropped that fucking transmission. We get the car bolted and ready to go, start driving. Transmission's fucked up. I only have one fucking gear in its third gear. So I'm in fucking open header, third gear on the highway, doing 40 miles an hour, trying to crawl back home in this fucking car. I wound up snatching another transmission with the quickness, but didn't have time to swap it out. I was in boots a lot faster than I originally planned and all that shit. And at this point in time, my dad had wound up coming back on a visit, and the car was sitting at my grandma's parking lot. They're like, well, you can't fucking leave that car here. It's a piece of shit. They're going to want to fucking tow it. I'm going to junk that fucking car. I was like, Dad, chill out. I posted it for sale. I posted it for $1,800, right? I said, I posted it for sale for $1,800. I was like, people are going to start calling you about this car. Do not take a goddamn dollar less than $1,800. I've only posted at $1,800 just because I want the car to go fast. You got to understand that this is back in 2008, before the fucking social media thing ever got close to blowing up. Motherfuckers were still buying shit off forums. All right. So, $1,800. I was like, $1,800 is the cost of the engine swap alone. And, of course, I was like, GSR swapped hatch, the fucked up tranny, but I got a replacement tranny in the trunk. $1,800, come get it. So, I left, joined the Army. Within a month or so, I wound up being able to get a hold of my dad again. And he's like, hey, son, could you please take that ad down? What? People are still calling. He sold it a day after I left. Like that, immediately gone. And then he pocketed that fucking money, that son of a bitch. Talked all that shit about my fucking car, about how I was garbage and I was stupid, wasting my money and time, and that car sold immediately. Fucking mind blown for him, wasn't he, fucking guy? Okay, so I got in the Army, went through basic training, went through AIT, and everybody in the cycle before us in AIT was fucking getting orders for Korea. And the NCOs told us, none of y'all got enough fucking rank to be worried about Korea. You're not going to go to Korea. Like, those guys did. It don't matter, though. We're not going to go to the same place. Bull fucking shit. Like, 80% of us got orders for Korea. We were all daily there, checking our upload status. One of the last 2 weeks in AIT, waiting to see what our first duty station was going to be. And sure enough, I got fucking Korea. I was like, wow, okay. So I'm not going home. I'm not even staying in the States. So I got home for, fucking leave. I had 30 days off, and then I was on a fucking plane to Korea. I was in Korea for 2.5 years. So 2.5 more years of blood itching. Because over there, you're not allowed to fucking drive. Not unless you're fucking married, and you have a family, and you're all off post and shit. You can't drive. You can't have a car. So, I was blood itching again for years, just fantasizing about the time where I could get back and get into a car. And also over there in Korea, you think that that'd be a great place to see cars and shit, but it's not. It's kind of, the scene over there is hella boring. It's not. I mean, when I first got to the first city, when I was going through Seoul and went to Yongsan, I saw a Skyline R34, and I got fucking like, oh my god, fucking Skyline, first time ever seeing one. I was fucking freaking out. I was like, this place is gonna be amazing, and it wasn't. It was fucking boring. It was just a rare occurrence. I didn't see anything else after that that was fucking worth a note. So anyway, I come back home from Korea 2.5 years later. 2.5 years later, I'm coming back with a wife and a newborn baby. And I got money in my pocket. I deliberately got a fucking $2,000 loan because I knew that when I got back home, I was going to need to get a car. And I wasn't too confident in my credit. So I was like, well, I got to get a car, whatever. So I get home, I start cruising through Craigslist, and I started asking around. I started asking the mechanic, I was like, anybody sell anything B-swap for $2,500? And he laughed at me, like, $2,500 for a B-swap car? Are you crazy? Back then, that was fucking, that was cheap change. Nowadays, you can fucking get a goddamn B16 swap car for fucking $1,000. But at the time, that was still a rarity. So we're hunting through Craigslist, and I saw a couple of cars. They were decent. I was like, all right, whatever. But the one that caught my attention was a fucking B16 swap CRX. And the guy wanted like fucking 25 for it or some shit, or 23. And then my dad had to translate for me because they were Spanish. They didn't speak goddamn lick English. And he eventually talked him down to $1,800. And so went down to look at the car, and it's like, he's like, oh, what happened was the guy was street racing, got in big trouble, got caught, big fat ass fucking ticket. And then on top of that, another one of his friends, that they were not the same time, but had recently passed away due to a crash from street racing. So they were like, okay, well, we're gonna, as punishment for him and plus to pay for the tickets, they were gonna sell the car. And my dad, of course, looking over the CRX with me, he's like, son, this thing ain't got no fucking back seats. I'm like, I know, but don't worry about it. I got this. Don't worry about it. I know it comes like that. There's no back seats for this car. It's a 2-seater. What about you? I was like, don't worry about it. I got it. so we got the CRX, and I drove it home, and it sucked. I was like, oh my god, my first fucking B-swap car ever, and it's a fucking, it's a CRX. Holy shit. And I got real pumped up for it. But it sucked because my VTEC didn't work. So I had the fucking B-swap car finally, VTEC didn't work. And the mechanic guy went over it for me, inspected it, redid all the harness and shit, but VTEC, for whatever reason, still didn't engage. But whatever. At this point in time, I was due to go to Fort Bliss in El Paso, Texas. And I was in fucking Miami. So I was in for a long fucking drive. And this fucking CRX that I owned for a very short amount of time. It was very brave of me to take fucking that long of a trip cross country with my newborn baby in a car that was really untested. But I had faith, and I did it. Well, so for you guys who are curious how the fuck I make the baby seat work, my son was only like 6 months old, so he wasn't very heavy. So what I did was the back piece that kind of clips into the sides, I took the hooks, the safety hooks for the baby seat, and I hooked those in there. And because he wasn't very heavy, it didn't come forward. Now, this is fucking terrible, because if I'd have been in a goddamn accident, my son would have launched throughout the middle of the car. It was a horrible, stupid, selfish thing that I did at the time. But I let the car shit go to my fucking head so many years waiting, and I didn't think properly. I think at the time I was already 23 years old, so you're looking at 4 years I'd spent, as a car enthusiast, not ever being able to drive a car that I wanted. And half that time, I didn't even have a car. So anyway, getting the fucking car is like June, going on July, and I drove that motherfucker all the way out to El Paso, Texas. And I did have wound up having a scary, almost breakdown issue, but when I was close to El Paso, but eventually I was able to limp through it and made it work. So get to El Paso, fix the little problems I had. One day I'm going out to get groceries, right? And we're coming back in the fucking thing, and I was just going, and there's this loop that would come up, to go to the highway, this on ramp, and it would go up and over like that, and I just hit it, pulled, did a third gear pull, and all of a sudden VTEC kicked in, I was like, oh my god, this is fucking amazing. So you can imagine that everywhere I was going, I was fucking like, meh, popping VTEC, and then I wound up having one of my first real races, decent race that I ever had. I was fucking with a 350Z. I wasn't really fucking with him, he was fucking with me. He was being a dickhead. I was behind him at a red light, and the light turned green, I was like, go. And he was being a dickhead, and he was waiting there on purpose for me to get caught by the red light again. I was like, well, fuck you. I'm not doing that. It's late. There ain't nobody out here. I'm going around you. So I went around him. And when I ran around him, the guy fucking punched him, right? So of course I fucking punched it too. We started going. And I pulled on him, man. In third gear, I left that fucking 350Z. And then I got pulled over not too long afterwards by a cop. What's going on back there? You guys racing? No, not racing. Just, he was being a dick. I was trying to go around him. We were racing. That guy was banging them gears out. Oh, shit. So in El Paso, I met another guy, another mechanic, and this is where I started getting towards the engine side of what I was doing. I had fucked with maintenance before then, and as a soldier, I was a mechanic. All right, so I met this guy, started getting into the aftermarket scene, and I realized that, the B Series, we, of course, in my younger days, we played with the idea of turbo, but I had a lot of people talk me out of it, and then I had a friend who did 2 turbo builds, or not builds, but he threw turbo kits on 2 engines and blew them back to back within 4 days. He blew his B16 and put a B18 in there, turboed that, blew that one too. But that's just because he was riding around stomping on the gas with no tune. You live and you learn. So I had that mechanic friend who was teaching me things, or not really teaching me. I was just watching and learning. And some of you guys from El Paso may know him. He was real famous out there for a while. It was Johan. He eventually had somebody he knew that was selling a turbo kit. I bought it again with income tax money, and I went to go throw the kit on the car, or he threw the kit on the car and never finished it. And then I got orders for deployment. I was going to Afghanistan. So again, getting taken out of the car scene to go overseas, and also all I thought about while I was over there. And I come back, and I go, me and him had like a little falling out right before I left, so I didn't really talk to him much. And I went to a shop there to try and get the turbo shit finished, and it was Speed Factory El Paso, which is now defunct. So I went out there. They ran up a big bill on me, and they took almost a year to finish that car. And then when I got the car, it was underpowered. It was built head, built block, and it was a smaller turbo setup, but I still think it was a 60 trim. And the guy, Rich, the tuner out there, my first tune was like 216 as a break-in tune, or at least that's what he said. And 216 felt fucking amazing. All right, I felt like I was the fastest thing in the world. Eventually, I went back and I got my final tune, and my final tune was 272 horsepower. I was like, this can't be, man. I was like, you built this motor to the fucking dick. I wound up paying right about $10,000. Or no, it was just under. It was like $8,000. On bullshit charges, but what was I going to do? At the time, I didn't really know fucking better. And I allowed somebody to talk me up into, oh, well, you're doing this, you might as well do this. I didn't know as much as I should know about the engine side back then. And I followed their advice. I got robbed out of a lot of fucking money, and then the car underperformed. So I was like, well, this can't be, maybe I just got to upgrade my turbo kit. I didn't need to, but I didn't, again, at the time, I didn't realize. So I went out and bought a fucking GT35 and new intercooler, new intake manifold, new throttle body, all this shit. And I go and I put it on this car, and this guy does the tune again, Rich again, Speed Factory Rich, and the car made like 340. And he did tell me one thing that a lot of tuners told me from that point on about that B16, that the car wants more power. It's nowhere near peak yet. It wants more power. Then 340, that's not really a surprise. That's, of course, they wanted more fucking power. But, I was really disappointed. He's like, we can make 500 on E85, let me know. And I was like, whatever, man. He did, quick fucking tune, a little bullshit tune, and gave me generic numbers and just fucking left it. And I wound up having, like, all kinds of problems with the tune and shit afterwards. Like, it was always giving me fucking problems. So, eventually, what had happened was the CRX, was it the fucking, the sway bars? Not the sway bars, but the torque, the traction control bar. The traction control bar, of course, when you go with that setup, or when you go with that turbo shit, you need to replace it. I replaced it with a cheap one, and every time I would adjust it, it would pop off. Like when I would hit it, the fucking wheel would come out because the fucking traction bar would pull apart. And then to tighten it down to where it wouldn't pull apart, it fucked up my caster real nasty. You know, it pushed my wheel into the body. And what eventually happened is my diff got stripped because that nasty forced angle with the axle had stripped my diff out. So eventually I pulled that swap out of the CRX, mainly because I couldn't get past the body just had too many fucking problems. It was going to cost me a fuck ton of money to keep the swap in the CRX, and I was tired of trying to throw money at it. I'd already spent a lot of money to get it built. So I pulled it out. I went out and bought a fucking EK fucking coupe, and that's the blue one that you see on the how much power stock. That's the fucking EK coupe I had. I pulled the single cam that was in there. I dropped that fucking B16, with a new tranny, because I didn't realize back then the diff was really easy to change. And the guy that I had that was a mechanic friend, he of course knew these things, but he was real. I found out later, I didn't know at the time, but I found out later that he was, safeguarding a lot of his knowledge. He didn't want me to learn too much. But we were still cool, though. We were still cool, even though he was fake as fuck. Anyway, so I went to go do the swap. I'd still at the time, I was living in an apartment. I couldn't do the swap myself. I didn't really have friends there. So he offered to do the swap for me for the low. And I wound up giving him, I gave him my old turbo kit because we were cool, man. I just gave him my old turbo kit for free and, some other stuff. And he put the swap in for me. Again, buying all brand new mounts, all this shit. And, so we get the car in there, and it felt pretty solid and shit, until I punched it, and then the car would jerk like buck, like bad motor mounts. And I mentioned to him, I was like, bro, what happened with the bad fucking motor mounts and shit? Or that feels like bad motor mounts when I just put brand new ones. He's like, I don't know what it is. And then later on, something happened with the transmission again. Oh, the tranny fucking blew up. And this transmission I had got through them. He went out and got it. And what it turns out was they put that transmission on. That's okay. Let me step back a little bit here. This is when it starts to go in where I started doing a lot of my own work by myself. I wound up getting out of the Army in 2013. And when I got out of the Army, I stayed in El Paso. I didn't leave. And I got a house. And his house had a garage. And I said, all right, Mr. Chris, this is what you want. This is what you've been wanting for the longest time. You no longer have an excuse not to do any of your own work. And I wanted to. I wasn't one of those guys making excuses just because I was scared to do it. I really wanted to, and my excuses were valid. I couldn't. So I get the fucking car in the garage. First thing I ever do that's like big on my own. I'd done it before when I was younger, but I'd always had friends help me. This was by myself. I dropped my transmission. Then when I dropped the transmission, I would go to drain the fluid out of it, and there's like fucking 3 or 4 ounces of oil in there. I was like, well, holy fuck, this is why the transmission blew up. And I actually blew up that transmission racing, as a matter of fact. Now that I go back, I missed a cool story there. I raced 2 bikes. I thought they were my homeboys from Bliss, because they had bikes, and they kept staring at me mad hard on the highway, and it got off. And it turns out they weren't. They were strangers. But we had we went on a roundabout, and it wasn't a fucking quarter mile thing. We ran for a couple miles. But we ran, and I fucking, third wouldn't go in. So, of course, I'm in a race. At the heat of the moment, I didn't give a shit if anything broke. I forced it in as hard as I could. And it caught. It went in. And I raced these 2 bikes. I beat one of them. And the third guy, I caught him. I caught him at the end of the day, or at the end of the fucking stretch, and I pulled on him too. And that was one of the greatest moments of my fucking life, because at that point, I was building the car to be faster than those guys. And I'm pretty sure they were 600s, They weren't that small to be 200s, but I'm pretty sure the bikes were the 600s. And I got the drop on them. They were surprised. And I was surprised, shit. I was surprised. But it turns out on the way back home, my transmission started already making clunking noises, and it eventually gave out on me on the road. And then, of course, I get it back to the house. I drop the transmission, get a replacement tranny. I put the transmission up, and then there was that. Then a little later on, the EK started fucking with me visually, because I would look at it, and I noticed that the body wasn't straight. And it's like one of those little nitpicky things that once you see it, you can't unsee it. And I wound up getting another car. I think I had a SRT4 and something else at the time. I can't remember what it was. I think I rebuilt the fucking crashed EG. Like that same mechanic friend, he went and got a car that had a front end damage, in New Mexico because he wanted the swap out of it. And I bought the shell. He got a swap and it sold us, and in his labor, he wound up paying absolutely nothing for the car. And for $400, I got me an EG sedan. And I with like another $100, I replaced all the front end that was fucked up. Replaced the fenders, the bumper, the hood. And then I got me a single cam swap, and it ran fine. And I used that for my daily, and shit like that. And eventually, I wound up blowing up the SRT4, but that's a whole other story that I won't even bother going into. But I got tired of looking at the little imperfections on the EK, so I decided it's time for a swap. Now, at the time, I'd been drooling over a Del Sol. I'd made up my mind that I really wanted one, and I finally found one. And I paid way too much money for this shell. I paid like $600 for this fucking shell that was beat the fuck. That Del Sol is the one that you see for the gear, boost by gear. That's my garage. That's my Del Sol right after the swap. So I wound up pulling the fucking swap out of the EK, putting it into that Del Sol, and then going and having it tuned again. But I had it tuned again by this other guy named Richie, who was also real close by my house. And El Paso Motorsports, I think is his name. But this guy, Richie 1320, I think was his name, or what he goes by on Facebook. He was supposed to be like this big tuning prodigy out there that everybody had their eyes on. I told him my situation with Rich from Speed Factory, and told him what the power was making in the car, told him what the build was, told him what the turbo setup was. And I told him, I was like, look, at this point, I just want to touch on 400. If I can just make 400 horsepower, I'll be happy with the car. He's like, I can do 400 horsepower easily. I'm like, fine, that's awesome. So I go to him, final tune, 420 horsepower. Score. And the day later, I was leaving El Paso to go back to Miami to take a job. And I wound up getting like 600 miles away from El Paso before the daily driver EG sedan took a shit and it blew tires. And we wound up taking the Del Sol off the dolly, and the Del Sol actually made the rest of the trip all the way to Miami. So I get to Miami, I was having a little fun with it, and eventually, like 6 or so months after I got back, I decided to take it to a tuner just to do a baseline run because I wanted to see what power the car was making, because the whole time coming out of El Paso, I had to keep adjusting the boost controller because the elevation was dropping closer and closer to sea level, and eventually back to sea level, so it was making boost, way higher than it was supposed to be. And so I go to this fucking tuning shop. I go to Genesis Automotive, and Lee at the time was still working with Eddie down there, and Lee rolled the car. It was Halloween day, and Lee rolled the car, and I was making like 180 wheel horsepower. I was like, holy fuck. And he was like, well, how much did you say this car was making? I was like, 420. I showed him the pictures. He's like, your map's all kinds of crazy fucked up and shit here, man. And he showed me my fuel maps were like fucking, I don't know what the fuck Richie did to make it reach 420, but he did it all kinds of crazy. And so anyway, Lee did me a favor, didn't charge me very much for the tune. We reran it through. By the time I left there that night, the car was making 438 wheel horsepower. So I got all that power back. And boy, did I fucking rip dick with that. I drove that car for another year. And then what happened was, the reason why I got rid of that car is because I had no license at the time. I had a Texas license. And, which I shouldn't have had. But I had a Texas license. But even though I had the Texas license, of course, if I went to the DMV in Florida, I was still popping up as suspended. And I couldn't re-register my car. And I had Texas plates on there still. And I was living in a trailer park. Trailer park rules like, if you don't get up to date on your registration, we're going to take your car. And they took one of my shells already. I had a big old fight about that. So I wasn't about to have them, fucking impound my goddamn Del Sol. And again, at the time, I didn't have, all my high school friends and childhood friends I had growing up in Miami were fucking ghosts in the wind. And nobody was willing to help me, stash my Del Sol. So I didn't want to, at that point, I'd already put that same swap in 3 different cars. And it wasn't my build; it was somebody else's. I didn't want to have that anymore. So I wound up stripping the turbo kit off of. Well, I wound up making a deal with somebody. Got the turbo kit off the car. I got my S300 back. He took the car and the motor, and he wound up putting the motor in his Del Sol, in his DA. And that, if you go through my after build reviews, that DA is what had my B16. And so I wound up trading it for like 3 engines. 3 engines, like 2 VTEC heads, and like $1,800. So I took a really big L on that swap on the very end. Anyway, he had that swap going, in his car for a while, and then he was doing his own tuning, and he wound up making like a little tuning mistake. He's blew the head gasket. I don't know how. I drove with no problems in the car for a long time, but he blew the head gasket. Swapped. I had a Cometic on there, so it was low compression head gasket, and he put a Felpro head gasket on there. Didn't change the tune to modify for compression over, and then it wound up blowing it up. But the thing was, by the time he blew up that B16, I had already started building engines. And I know I kind of skipped past that in the story. But to backtrack just a little bit, when I started building engines, all I did was I got on Facebook, all these Honda groups everywhere. Everybody's selling all these Honda shits. And I just went out and I bought a F22 single cam. And I ripped it apart. I sat in a chair in my front driveway, or in my driveway, and I had a cherry picker, and I kind of held it up, and I held it straight, and I ripped the head off of it, and because I couldn't carry it into my house. Back then I was real weak, I couldn't fucking do it. Then I had to make it lighter so I could carry it up the stairs to get it into my house. So I took the head off of it, stripped off all the extra shit, and then I opened it up. I pulled out the pistons and rods. So I still had the crank in there. Or no, I didn't. I left the pistons. I broke it down to a short block. I got it as bare as I could as a short block. And then I was able to fucking struggle one step at a time, scooting it up. So I was able to get it in my house. And then I don't even think I had an engine stand yet at the time. I don't even remember how the fuck I did it. Or I might have had an engine stand. I did have an engine stand. And I put this fucking engine on the stand in my living room, and I finished tearing it down. And that was my first engine experience. I tore everything down. And then I wound up not putting it back together. I had it all in pieces, and I stashed it on the side. And I wound up actually trading that block off. And then after I felt comfortable with it, I started buying B18s. And I started taking those apart and rebuilding them. And I did all my own research, on fucking Google. Found all the torque specs I needed. I had a friend at the time who I've mentioned before, who I've made a video on, is Alex, the guy he's building that MR2. He was my guru at the time, and every once in a while, if I got stuck on something I couldn't find a clear answer on Google, I would ask him, and he'd put his little input in real quick, and that made all the difference in the world for me. And so I felt confident going forward and continuing these builds. And that's it. That's how I got started. I know it's real simple, but and there's no big complicated shit to it. I bought my first engine, took it apart, and then that made me more confident to deal with another one, and I just started rebuilding just like that and selling them. And then I kind of got out of it for a while. I didn't want to do it anymore because I wasn't making any money off of it, and I was barely making money enough to clear parts. But just like my initial addiction to cars had been with the speed, my addiction for engines came. And it came on hard. I couldn't get away from it. So I kept buying engines even though I said I wasn't going to anymore. Kept doing the rebuilds. And eventually I think the first built engine I made, the first one I built for power, was a B16. I used NPR rods, or pistons, and then Eagle rods. Eagle rods I bought secondhand. NPRs I bought brand new. Sold it, or I didn't sell it. I traded it for a shell. And that motor... The guy who I got the trade from, eventually sold it to a friend who wound up making like 380 horsepower on it. Of course, the engine could have made a lot more, but he just, I don't know, I think the supporting mods weren't there. So anyway, kept building. If you guys go on my Facebook page and you go click on the videos, you'll see that I made some really shitty early videos back then. And what my idea was, the original idea was that I was going to make videos companions for the engines. What I was going to do was build an engine, sell it to somebody, go for a ride along, and then film that ride along and talk about the engine build. So I was going to do, it was like a mix match of engine / car review, and that was the idea there. And I know I really wanted to do that. And at the time, I didn't have barely any followers on Facebook. Nobody ever really paid attention to the shit I was doing. But after a while, it kind of got to the thing where people did start to peep game. You know, and it took me a year. It took me a fucking year of fucking doing this shit down there to build up enough trust with the community to start getting on. And of course, what happened? Right when I really started to take off, I moved again. I was building engines for like I think it was about 3 years, you know. But it was like that one last year I was there. I was really pushing my shit out there to get known, and I even had some run-ins on Facebook where there was kids out there that were stealing my pictures, and they were using my pictures to sell blown engines as a rebuild engine, which was pretty fucking crazy. Flattering, but fucked up. I would have every once in a while some guy would be like, bro, your partner sold me a bad engine, bro. I need my money. I'm like, oh, that's not the case. And then one guy was like, oh, this fucking H22 is fucking knocking, and he posted a picture of the build. I was like, dude, that's mine. That's my crib. That engine's sitting in. That's not an H22. That's a B18. I actually have that H22 head from that block. I wanted to buy that H22 from him, but I didn't get it. And eventually my friend got it. Kino went out and bought it, and we stripped it down. The engine had a hole in the fucking block and a knock. And I wound up taking the head. I wound up getting the head from that. So anyway, I was working for Ryder, and after 4 or 5 months, I started working in the office there. I was like the assistant supervisor, or assistant to the supervisor. I was doing that, and I was still living in a shitty trailer where I had vermin problems. Where, you know, I had plenty of times where I had to live with cats because there was fucking mice that kept getting in the house, and the cats they would kill shit, but the cats were assholes too and kept making messes. But whatever, you know, I wound up covering for the supervisor in my shop for like 3 months or 4 months, you know, with just me alone. And they brought the idea of giving me a raise to me, and I didn't ask for it. But of course, after 3 or 4 months of being told, hey, you're going to get a raise, after a while I started like, yo, where's my fucking raise? It never happened. So my supervisor came back, and he was telling me, he's like, bro, you're young, you can transfer, you know, transfer to get your raise if they don't want to give it to you. And I was like, all right, I finally took him serious, and I started looking. And it seemed like an act of God at the time, but I fucking was poking around, and there was a fucking service manager's position open in Huntington, West Virginia. My fucking town that I grew up in as a kid. And now, I even played with the idea of coming back to Huntington when I was getting out of the Army because I knew the cost of living up here was cheaper. And I figured it would be better for my kids. Because Miami's rough on kids. You know, unless you can isolate them and fucking kid them in private schools, Miami's not a good place to grow up. You know, I went down there when I was 14 and had a pretty rough time. So, and plus my son, he's a little bit on the slow side. He's not retarded. We had it tested. But he's a little bit on the slow side, and he's super innocent. And I was like, dude, they'll fucking kids down there are animals. They'll fucking eat him alive. But eventually, you know, we went back to Florida. We wound up going to Broward. And by the time he was old enough to go to school, it wasn't a bad place. It just had bad teachers. Whatever. So, I see the fucking job posting for this, and I was like, as a service manager, I'm a fucking low-level technician. I don't want to fucking jump and grab that. And he boosted me up. He's like, fuck it. I Googled it. I saw the shop was real small. I was like, fuck it, I can do that, you know. I was managing 600 trucks. The fleet management down there in Miami was ridiculous. And then I find out that the trucks, there's only like 200 in the fleet up there. So I'm like, fuck it. I put in the application, wound up getting a phone call. The maintenance manager wound up fucking, which is like the district manager in Ryder, he wound up getting a hold of me. He's like, well, yeah, they flew me up. I had an interview. I also made a video about this a long ass time ago. You know, when you see the one that's got West Virginia on there, I was talking about this, what happened, and they're gonna hire me. Shit. So I flew up for an interview, and the interview was fucking smooth, and they gave me the money I asked for, and it seemed like a great idea at the time. You know, I was looking at $60,000 guaranteed with a possible $5,000 bonus at the end of the year. I was only making $40,000 at the time. You know, what I didn't take into factor was that my wife was making around $30,000 a year, and the fact that she, to this day, we've been up here 6 months now, was not able to get a fucking job. So yeah, I wound up taking a big pay cut to come up here. Not even realize I was going to, or I wound up not taking a pay cut. Well, yeah, I think I probably did, you know, because last year we wound up total household income was like $70,000. So At $60,000 alone for me, that's a $10,000 pay cut, which is the reason why, guys, that's also slowed me down on buying things like new parts and buying new engines. You know, it's kind of hurt my pockets. You know, this shit is 100% on me. I'm doing 2 car payments, the house, all the new furniture we had to buy, all this shit. Anyway, so at the time I was thinking, okay, I'm going up to a place where the engines are going to be kind of dry. Because down in Miami, I was buying like a new engine, like every paycheck. I would go out and buy a new block. And since I've been up here, I've not been able to get one. I have had no fucking luck. Alright. So that blows fucking cock. So anyway, the whole thing was started, the YouTube thing was, earlier that year, at the beginning of the year, I got like a big ass fucking storage space with a friend. It had electricity and shit. We wound up working out 24-hour passwords to get in the gates. And I started going to the weekends, and I set up like a little engine shop there. If you also scroll down through Facebook, you'll see the back bedroom I started off in. It was very, very tiny. So we went there. I started making like an engine shop. And it was supposed to be me and my homeboy. He was going to do swaps. I was going to do builds. And he would charge his price, so I'd charge mine. We'd build together, but make our own set money. It didn't work out that way. He didn't wind up working. He didn't like work. So, but anyway, I kept doing my engine builds. And at the time, I had recently sold a Vitara, which was like the video that started this channel. My Vitara Mini Me review. I sold that engine to this guy who had a horsepower goal for 400. I'm not going to go into that because that video does. So I made that video and I posted it on my Facebook where nobody saw it. And then one day I was poking around YouTube. I was like, for shits and giggles, let me upload it. I uploaded it in like January or February. And that was the original raw video of me doing this talking. And then I think 3 or 4 months later, around May or so, I checked the video. I had 30 fucking views. 30 views out of the fucking thousands of videos, Honda videos on fucking YouTube. 30 fucking people, 30, has stumbled across that fucking video and watched it. That threw me for a loop. I thought there's no way anybody's ever gonna see this shit. And people did. And I was like, yo, it's a possibility that people are gonna watch some of my videos. So then I wanted to do another follow-up video with that, with doing it, riding along in the car, and it never happened because the guy just never sunk up with me. And one day I just thought I would, talk about the engine, that single cam that I was going to rebuild and touch on it a little bit. And then, I kept filming, and I realized that this was going to be an engine building video, that I was making an engine building video. Now, remember, the whole point of the YouTube channel thing at the time when I started it was just to do car reviews, engine reviews, or after-build reviews for the engines. And I made the engine video, and I posted it up, and people started watching it. People were watching it. And that first video was horrible. But it's like one of my most viewed shits, man. Like, a lot of people have seen that video. But it doesn't represent what the channel has become now. Not really. But, it was my inspiration. I got hooked on that shit, just like I got hooked on the engines, and I kept making them, and I would average 30 views. I had 6 or 7 subscribers for fucking months. But I persevered. I stuck through with it. I kept fucking doing it. And eventually, I started to take off. Of course, then, too, this goes to the YouTube channel also evolving again, because I started to get really worried there for a while once I moved up here. And I realized the engines weren't going to be something that were going to come easy for me up here. I really, it's like knowing and then knowing. So I realized the engines were going to be hard as fuck to find up here. And I started to freak out. I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do? I'm going to run out of content. And then, luckily for me, you guys saved me. You guys fucking came in here, you started asking questions, and I realized that there's so much more I could be doing for you guys other than just engine builds. And after I fucking dumped 6 or 7 of these videos in 2 or 3 days, my fucking subscribers jumped like crazy. And I realized that I have tapped into a new thing. And I really hope, I really enjoy this Sunday through Thursday thing. It's really nice to be able to have a schedule that's more than just one upload a week. It's nice to be able to talk to you guys. Sometimes, I'm not going to lie, it's a little bit of a challenge. But for the most part, it's not. It's fun. And I really like talking to you guys. And a lot of you guys fucking inbox me now and talk, and that's great. And like I said to you before, I don't mean to come off as hey, an asshole or rude because I'm real short, or I give you a link to a video. It's just that I want to catch you guys up hyper fast to get to the point where we can, really hold a conversation. But yeah. So I know maybe you guys were thinking it was going to be a real big video on just talking about how I got started with engines, but it's so much more than that, because the engines alone wasn't the only thing. And if for you guys to have a more concrete answer, I've been building engines for about 2.5 years now, 3 years, and once I obsess on something, I really get into it. And like since I started doing the engine shit, I started really digging into researching like different combinations with Steel Auto Works, and then watching Evans Tuning. You know, I don't settle for just anybody's answer. You know, I go out there and I find all the shit that I possibly can, and then I play with the different combinations of things I can do. You know, I always like to see what else can be milked out of these parts. So yeah, that's pretty much all there is to it. You know, there at this point, you know, you find me here. And as far as my situation is now, something I haven't told most people. I mean, my immediate family knows here in West Virginia. Only one or two people outside of my family knows. One is a good friend of mine, Curry, the guy that I met while I was in the Army, and Blake, my old shopmate. I've told him about it. What happened was I came up here, I took this fucking job, and I did what they asked me to do. I kept the shop numbers good. I kept the employees happy. You know, I was non-confrontational. And my guys like me. Individually, they've all come up to me, besides like one or two of them, and told me how much they like it better now with my loose authority. You know, the way I run my shit is that if you're doing your fucking job and you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, then I'm not gonna fuck with you. If I catch you sitting watching YouTube videos on the computer or fucking with your phone, I'm not gonna say a damn word to you. Just don't let me catch later on that there was work that was supposed to be done and you didn't do it. I'm just gonna assume when I see you that all your shit is done, and that worked. You know, everybody did what they were supposed to do, and nobody ever gave me no problems. Everybody was happy. I was happy. They were happy. But it turns out the director of operations wasn't so happy. In December, they did a big layoff in the company. Like, we lost a deal with a national customer, and it sank the company. Like, it cost the company like $3 million. So they started doing cutbacks everywhere they could. And one of the director's friends that had been with the writer for years and years and years and years got laid off. And my director of operations up here, he's a real buddy guy. He likes to look out for his friends. So he went and promised his fucking friend that he was going to get him a job back. He was going to find him a job somewhere in his BU. And see, my biggest failure coming up here was not my inability to do the job. I could do the job. What the problem was, I came up 1,000 miles, and I came to an area where I knew no one. I had no friends. No friends in the company. That's what I'm talking about. No friends in the company. Nobody that had any reason to watch my back, except for the guy who hired me. And he looked out for me for as long as he could. But there was a couple people in my shop that were sour that they didn't get the job. Because there was people that applied in my shop for the position and didn't get it. Because one of them was a fucking asshole and the other one pissed off the boss. So they got passed over on the job. And because of that, they're real passive aggressive, man. Every little thing they could find to snitch on me about, they snitched on me. Like one day when I first got up here, my first week, I wore shorts to work. Why? Because I didn't have any fucking clothes, man. No uniforms and no clothes. I was out of clothes, and I asked my boss, hey, what do you want me to wear for work? Do you want me to go to the store and buy some new clothes, or what's up? And he goes, as long as you wear safety boots, I don't give a fuck what you wear. I took that very literally, and I wore shorts the next day. And that fucking got up to the director's ears, and I got fucking bitched out about that. Then one day, it was close to the end of shift, or close to the end of my shift. One of the guys was washing a truck, and my car was filthy. So from the road trip up here, so I pulled it in the back real quick, and I hosed it off. And I didn't interfere with what he was doing. He was spraying the truck down. I grabbed the brush, and I fucking scrubbed it down real quick. And then when he went back to the brush, I grabbed the squirter, sprayed it off. It took me like 10 minutes tops. Well, one of the fucking guys who was kissing ass to one of the bitches who was snitching on me when told that I did that. And then I got a fucking call the next morning talking about, did you wash your car on company property? Well, yeah. Well, you can't be doing that. It's against company fucking shits. Anyway, the whole thing is like a whole bunch of little nitpicky things. Pretty much the whole time I was there, this guy was trying to get his buddy a job back. So the official story is I got one day, no warning, no write up, no verbal warning, no write up. The guy who hired me came in and said, "We are demoting you. We need you to step down." I'm like, what the fuck? You're like, no fucking warning, no write up, nothing. I've had a perfect record in this company. You know, you guys fucking paid for me to come up here. You brought me 1,000 fucking miles, and you're telling me I got to go back and be a fucking mechanic again. And I said, yep. I'm like, why? And they're like, oh, well, apparently I was in a meeting. I was in a customer meeting in early January. And I was having a private conversation with one of my colleagues. And I say fuck a lot. Just like I said in my trailer, I say fuck a lot. If you guys watch my fucking videos, you know that I fucking say fuck a whole lot. And in my casual conversation, which wasn't very loud because it was private, I happened to be overheard saying fuck because this ninja-ass old man had his back to us, but was close enough to our conversation to eavesdrop. And he reported that shit. And that was like the fucking cherry on top for the director to have his excuse to have me removed. And he's like, oh, well, HR got a hold of it, and they said we could terminate you on the spot for that, but we're not going to bring you and your family up here just to have you with no job. I'm like, yeah, dude, because at that point, I'm fucking bringing a gun up in here and shooting all you motherfuckers. You got me fucked up. So it was a pretty heavy blow to me, man. Fucking rocked my goddamn world. I took a couple days off. I was looking about going to getting in the Army again, and then I realized that the Army, you know, we're probably going to be going to Syria here pretty soon, so that would potentially put me out of the loop for a year, and that would fuck up this. And YouTube is something I want to do now. Even whether I make money off of it or not, I still want to continue to do this. So I realized that that's not what I wanted. And once I calmed down enough to realize that I wasn't going to be immediately fired, I figured, you know, I'm just going to keep my head down or whatever. So this whole past month, I've known that I'm losing my job. And but after the initial situation, my boss that hired me came back in. He said, "Look, man, this you're capable of doing this. You've already proven it. You've shown it. We're gonna put you in the future leaders program to retrain you and all this shit." I'm like, whatever. I don't care. Fucking. And I played with the idea of going back to Miami. Now, if I'd have been a younger guy like I was when I was here at 19, I would have gotten on a plane the next day. But I have a wife and kids and house and all this shit I have to move, so couldn't fucking do it. So, and plus, he kind of indirectly told me he wasn't going to put a good word of mouth in for me if I wanted to do a transfer, because he thinks that I need more training. So I was okay, fine. So what I figure is, my situation is this, this is a good place for my son. My son is on the slow side. He's excelled in school here because there's like fucking 10 kids in his class and 2 teachers, and the teachers that are here actually give a shit. Compared to Florida, where it's like 60 kids per fucking class, 1 teacher, and the teacher is just there for a paycheck, doesn't give a fuck about the kids. So there's that. Plus, I've reconnected with family that I'm getting along with very, very well. Way better than I thought I would. And I have this big-ass fucking house, and I got my shop. And I'm really happy with everything like that. But the one thing that's really driving me crazy is I can't get my engines. And I'm greedy enough to want to go back to Florida just for that. So my situation is they're promising to retrain me up, and I know that they're going to keep me as a pocket supervisor. Like, I know that if something happens, if somebody gets bumped up again, or somebody gets fired, or whatever happens, if there's an opening, I'm the guy they go to first, which is fine with me. That's cool. But at the same time, too, by next year income tax season, if they haven't bumped me back up, and if they haven't made do with their promise to train me like they said, I can use that as leverage to get my recommendation. And I'm thinking about going back to Central Florida, not to South Florida, but to Central Florida, where it's a little bit more rural and calm and a little cheaper to live. And that way I can still be back in Florida, close to Orlando, close to Tampa, close to Miami, that I can still easily go within a couple hours drive and pick up a whole bunch of shit. Or I can even have homeboys pick up shit for me and just go scoop it up on the weekend. That'd be great. So I am playing with ideas right now what to do, guys, and I really am trying to get back to a place where I can get a load of engines again. I guess it's going to be between now and next February to see what the fuck is going on. But in the meantime, I am going to keep trying to get new engines for you guys, and I'm going to continue to do the videos that I've been doing. And I will say, I'm not going to end this. I'm not going to end tonight's video on like I would normally do. Just what I'm going to say for you guys that have managed to sit here for a fucking hour, or even come back and finish it. Thanks for watching. Thanks for watching my story. I appreciate it, and hopefully I get to grow with some of you guys. Hopefully one day this will be like a required watch for guys that are into cars, and we can look back on this in a couple of years and think, holy shit, what a fucking journey we've gone through on just this YouTube thing alone. And I'm looking forward to talking to you guys again. I'll be back this weekend to finish that B18 build, which doesn't seem to be very popular. But I'll be back this weekend for that, and hopefully to start taking some videos about the Integra. Alright, thanks guys for sticking around and watching. I greatly appreciate it, and I hope this satisfies some of your all's curiosity. And what about you guys? You know, young and old, I've got guys from around the world talking to me now. I've got some really young kids that are getting into it. I've got some older guys that are, you know, older than me that are talking to me. What's your all story, man? Fucking drop it in the comments below. I read every fucking comment. I respond to almost every comment just about every comment that I get. And I'd like to see what brings you all to the automotive world. So, all right, I'll talk to you guys later. Peace.